In October of 1839 at the Richmond Slave Market, one of the busiest in the entire South, Colonel Abner Caldwell did something no planter, merchant, or auctioneer had ever witnessed. He announced that he was placing one woman for sale. Just one. Her name was Aurelia, aged 22, tall, carved from silence and dignity, and possessing a beauty so rare that men began bidding before the auction even started. Within 4 minutes, the price crossed $6,800, then $9,000, then $12,400, an impossible figure at the time. And yet the bidding did not stop. Something about her terrified these men. Something none of them understood. Something Abner Caldwell refused to explain. By sunset, Aurelia became the most expensive enslaved woman ever sold in Virginia's history. Within 6 weeks, 3 men connected to her sale were dead, 1 plantation burned to the ground, and the Caldwell family name was erased from county records. What happened in Richmond that day? Why did Aurelia fetch more than most estates? And what secret did she carry? One that white society tried to bury so completely that even historians missed it. Before we uncover the disturbing truth, subscribe, hit that bell, and comment your state below. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. In October of 1839, the Richmond Slave Market woke to the kind of chill that slid under clothing and settled straight into bone. A thin gray mist clung low across the cobblestones, and the iron chains hanging from the wooden posts clicked softly in the wind like teeth chattering from fear. Horses stamped and snorted, wagons creaked, tobacco crates were stacked in uneven towers, and the smell of damp earth mixed with the sourness of sweat and gunpowder. Men gathered early that morning, planters in wool coats, traders with ledgers tucked beneath their arms, merchants who loved spectacle almost as much as profit. But even among these hardened buyers there was confusion. Only one person was listed on the auction slate. One. A single name. A single woman. Aurelia. No age. No description. No lot grouping. Just the name, written in a hand that trembled when the auctioneer lifted the card. Colonel Abner Caldwell stood a few paces behind the platform, hands clasped too tightly behind his back, jaw locked so hard the muscle twitched. He wore a dark coat that fit him poorly, and the brim of his hat shadowed his expression. But nothing could hide the way his eyes darted, calculating, fearful, almost feverish. What none of the men crowding the front understood was simple. Abner Caldwell had run out of time. He knew it. Aurelia knew it. And by sundown so would everyone else. The auctioneer, Jebediah Pike, cleared his throat. Gentlemen, Colonel Caldwell presents a special offering today. He hesitated, for even he could not make sense of the colonel's terms. One woman only. No bundle. No children. No pairing. A single private lot. Murmurs broke out. Private lot. For a woman? What is he hiding? Caldwell's desperate. Everyone knows it. Pike raised a hand. Bring her forward. Aurelia stepped out onto the platform, ankles bare, wrists uncuffed. The crowd stiffened almost collectively. They had expected fear. They had expected trembling. They had expected pleading eyes, slouched posture, lowered head. They got none of it. Aurelia stood straight as if the platform were a ballroom floor and the wind a polite escort. Her posture was quiet defiance wrapped in grace. Her skin carried a warm bronze hue, more luminous than any of them had ever seen. Her hair, tied loosely at the back, brushed her shoulders in layered waves. And her face. No one spoke for a long moment. Some men forgot to breathe. Pike found his voice. 22 years of age. Skilled in varied domestic trades. His voice faltered again because Caldwell had intentionally left half the description blank. Aurelia kept her eyes forward. But inside her chest, her heart hammered against a years-old cage. She had known this day was coming. She had felt it in Caldwell's sudden silence, in the papers he burned in the middle of the night, in the way he stopped letting her near the main house. She knew more than any of the men staring up at her. What they did not know was that she had been preparing for this moment for years. Nathaniel Caldwell, the colonel's 20-year-old son, stood near the rear of the crowd. His gaze lingered on Aurelia longer than it should have. A quiet obsession lived there, one she recognized all too well. Nathaniel leaned toward a merchant beside him. She should fetch a high price, he whispered. The merchant snorted. High. Caldwell is claiming she's worth more than a team of prime field hands. Nathaniel glanced at his father, then at Aurelia. She is. The merchant raised a brow. Why? Nathaniel didn't answer. Instead, his attention returned to Aurelia, who still hadn't broken posture. Still hadn't shown fear. Still hadn't shown anything. She knew he was watching her. She always knew. Pike clapped his hands. Let us begin the bidding. Opening at $2,000. The response was immediate. 2,200. 25. 3,000. Then it surged. 4,000. 45. 5. The crowd shifted, energy rising like sparks catching dry grass. Aurelia didn't flinch. She had been taught long ago that a still face was a shield. A silence was a weapon. And today both were armor she needed. Abner Caldwell's breathing grew heavier with every rising number. His hand slipped into his coat pocket, brushing the folded document hidden there, the very document that would have ended his life if shown to the wrong man. He had kept it for years, terrified of it, praying no one ever asked to see it. Now he was here, selling the living proof of what he had done. The bidding spiked again, voices layered with competitiveness and something else. Desire, greed, curiosity. 6,200. 68. 7,000. Caldwell flinched. Somewhere behind him, a pistol clicked, a guard adjusting his belt. But the sound sliced through the colonel's nerves and his throat tightened. No one noticed the man standing on the upper balcony, watching the auction with a stillness too deliberate to be casual. His coat collar was raised and a scar traced the side of his jaw. He never raised a hand to bid. He didn't need to. He was waiting. Aurelia's eyes flicked upward for half a heartbeat, almost invisible, almost nothing. Yet it was enough. She had seen him before. Not often. Not long. But enough. Enough to know the danger he brought. Judge Thaddeus Bellweather stepped forward at last, voice smooth as polished stone. 8,000. Multiple men froze. Bellweather's presence shifted the air. He was a man feared in 3 counties, a man who used the law like a blade. If he wanted something, others rarely contested. Pike swallowed. 8,000 from Judge Bellweather. Then, as if pulled by invisible strings, the numbers rose again. 8-5. 9. 9-6. Bellweather's jaw tightened. His fingers tapped his cane. 10,000. A hush fell so abruptly it felt like the wind stopped. Caldwell looked ill. Nathaniel nearly stepped back. And Aurelia. Only Aurelia understood what that number really meant. Not a price. A warning. Her life was no longer her own. Her secret, still buried, had just been sold to the highest bidder. And none of them knew that the sale they witnessed would ignite a chain of events that would burn 2 plantations, bury 3 men, and expose the truth Abner Caldwell had killed to hide. Not yet. But they would learn soon enough. Long before the bidding war that shook Richmond, before Bellweather's cold voice cut through the morning air and sealed her fate, Aurelia had lived in a corner of Virginia that rarely appeared on maps. Caldwell's estate, Redwood Hollow, rested on a plateau of rolling fields and crooked oak trees tangled with Spanish moss. The mansion itself rose in pale brick and white columns, its beauty a thin disguise over decades of secrets. Aurelia had been born in one of the back rooms of the carriage house, late on a winter night when frost crawled across the windows like thin fingers searching for a way inside. Her mother, Sabine, delivered her alone, refusing the help of Caldwell's hired midwife. Sabine had been a quiet woman, but fierce in ways that did not show until necessary. She wrapped the infant in a scrap of linen and held her close as if shielding her from the very world. Sabine was not like the others on the estate. She carried herself with a kind of soft nobility, as though she had once known a different life. She spoke French fluently, English cleanly, and walked without the weary stoop seen in many who lived under Caldwell's rule. Some whispered she had been raised in Louisiana under a wealthy family that educated their house servants. Others said she had belonged to a French widow who treated her like kin. But the truth, as always, was more complicated. Caldwell kept Sabine isolated from the others. She worked inside the house, handling linens and inventory books, and sometimes, when the colonel was deep in his cups, reading aloud letters that he could not read himself. Aurelia grew up watching her mother's hands glide across pages with confidence, tracing words she longed to understand. When Aurelia was 5, she found Sabine writing by candlelight. The flame flickered over a page filled with beautiful handwriting, smooth curves and flourishes that didn't match the coarse scrawl of plantation ledgers. "What does it say?" Aurelia whispered. Sabine hesitated. Then she lifted the girl onto her lap, guiding her small fingers toward the page. "It says," Sabine murmured, "that words are doors. They open things the world wishes to keep shut." Aurelia didn't understand then, but she would. As Aurelia grew older, Sabine became even more protective, ushering her away whenever Caldwell appeared. At times, the colonel would stand in a doorway, watching Sabine with a narrowed gaze, as if inspecting something that belonged to him but no longer obeyed. He never spoke to Aurelia directly, but his eyes did. coldly, measuring her, regretting her. Aurelia learned to read at 7, in stolen moments behind the smokehouse or beneath the loft of the stables. Sabine taught her French phrases first, gentle sounds like lullabies, and then English words that felt heavier, made of iron and consequence. One morning, Aurelia overheard 2 field hands whispering, "She can read. Sabine teach her." That gon be trouble. For Sabine. For the girl. Aurelia tucked the conversation inside her chest and kept reading anyway. When she was 9, a carriage arrived at Redwood Hollow, dark green with a gold crest glinting on the door. A man in a gray coat stepped out. Caldwell met him on the porch and led him into the study. Aurelia remembered the way Sabine froze when she saw the carriage, how her hands trembled just once before she composed herself. Aurelia listened that night from the hallway. 2 men argued inside the study. "You said the child would be gone long before this," the stranger said. "She will be," Caldwell hissed, "when the time is right." "And Sabine?" A long silence. Aurelia's breath held itself. "She knows her place," Caldwell said eventually. The stranger gave a humorless laugh. "No, Abner. She knows yours." The man left before sunrise, disappearing down the road that wound toward Richmond. Aurelia never saw him again, but she would remember the tension in her mother's shoulders for years. After that visit, Caldwell became more watchful, more paranoid. Aurelia often caught him standing on a balcony or in a corridor, staring down at her and Sabine as if analyzing 2 pieces of a puzzle he feared someone else would solve first. Sabine tried to hide her unease, but her gentleness became sharper, urgently instructive. "Never speak your thoughts aloud. Never show fear. And if someone ever asks about your father, say nothing." Aurelia obeyed. But silence did not erase curiosity. One sweltering summer afternoon when she was 11, she slipped into the small library near the main parlor, a room Sabine had warned her away from. On the wall hung a large portrait of Caldwell's late wife, Eleanor Caldwell. The image captured a woman with serene features, dark eyes, and a quiet strength. Aurelia stared. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked like her. Not vaguely. Not distantly. Unmistakably. Aurelia stepped back, heart pounding. "Mama?" she whispered when Sabine found her there. Sabine closed the door quickly, shadows trembling across her face. Aurelia pointed to the portrait. "Why do I look like her?" Sabine's eyes glistened. "That is not your burden. Tell me." Sabine shook her head firmly. "Some truths are not safe." Aurelia whispered, "Then why does he hate me?" Sabine reached up, cupped her daughter's face, and said words Aurelia would never forget. "Because you remind him of the one thing he cannot bury." What Aurelia did not know, what she could not have known, was that those words would become prophecy. And the resemblance that haunted Caldwell would one day unravel everything he had built. By the time Aurelia turned 15, Caldwell had stopped allowing her near the house entirely. But the portrait remained. A silent witness. A warning. A truth rooting deeper in the dark. Redwood Hollow appeared respectable from a distance, its brick columns clean, its shutters polished, its gardens pruned into geometric obedience. But the closer one came, the more the truth bled through. The wood along the back porch was rotting. The roof needed repair. The fields produced half the yield they once had. And Colonel Abner Caldwell moved through the halls of his estate like a man who continually feared what might be standing behind him. By the time Aurelia turned 16, Caldwell's debts had multiplied like weeds, silent, stubborn, crawling beneath every ledger line. He owed money to tobacco merchants, to a Charleston supplier, to a Richmond broker who had begun sending increasingly sharp letters. And still, Caldwell kept parading himself around the county as a gentleman of fine means. It was Nathaniel who saw the cracks first. He was older now, tall, fair-haired, his features shaped by that careless confidence only the sons of powerful men were taught from birth. But beneath his veneer of arrogance lived something else, curiosity mixed with unease. Nathaniel had grown up watching Aurelia from a distance. Not with cruelty. Not even with desire at first. With confusion. With fascination. With a sense that she did not fit the world she was forced into. One humid night in late August, Nathaniel slipped into his father's study, ignoring the strict rule that he was never to enter the room without permission. He rummaged through desks, drawers, and the tall cherrywood cabinet Caldwell kept locked until the hour he drank himself numb. He found letters. Dozens. Some written in elegant handwriting by a woman he had never heard of. Others stamped with the seal of a Virginia courthouse. He read one. The girl must remain hidden. There are men searching for her who will not rest until they confirm the truth. Nathaniel's throat tightened. The girl. Not Sabine. Not one of the field hands. Aurelia. He grabbed another letter. You assured me the child would be out of sight long before this dispute reached Virginia. If she is discovered, the consequences will be severe. Nathaniel's hands shook. For the first time in his life, fear, not for himself but for someone else, settled in his stomach like a stone dropped in cold water. What are you doing? Nathaniel spun around. Caldwell stood in the doorway, sleeve rolled up, whiskey glass in hand, breath sharp with bitterness. Nathaniel stammered, I was only... Caldwell crossed the room in 2 strides and seized the letters. These are not for your eyes. You lied to me, Nathaniel said, voice cracking. About her. About everything. Caldwell slammed a fist onto the desk. She is none of your concern. Nathaniel stepped back but did not leave. Then why do you look at her that way? Why did Mother look at her that way? For a moment, the colonel's facade splintered. Something raw, almost deranged, flickered across his face. You know nothing of your mother, Caldwell said sharply. And you know even less of the mistakes that ruin men. Nathaniel swallowed. Is Aurelia one of those mistakes? Caldwell's jaw clenched so hard the muscle jumped. Speak that name again and I will send you away from this house. Nathaniel held his father's gaze. You cannot keep secrets forever. Caldwell leaned in, eyes burning. I have kept this one for 19 years. He shoved the letters into a drawer and locked it. Then he grabbed Nathaniel's wrist and forced him toward the door. Whatever you think you know, Caldwell hissed, bury it. And if you care for your own future, you will never speak of that girl again. Nathaniel left the study shaken. But the damage was done. And Aurelia, though she had not seen the confrontation, sensed the shift. Nathaniel began lingering near the workyards more often. He asked quiet questions. He watched Caldwell with suspicion instead of obedience. Aurelia noticed it. Caldwell noticed it. And the tension between father and son grew as thick as the humid Virginia dusk. Meanwhile, Caldwell's financial desperation deepened. Merchants stopped offering credit. A Charleston supplier sued him for unpaid shipments. His crops failed that season, and rumors began spreading that Redwood Hollow was sliding toward bankruptcy. At night, Caldwell paced the halls, gripping a silver flask, muttering to himself. He opened the locked drawer, removed the letters, read them, burned some, hid others. His hands shook. His eyes darted at every shadow. The house servants whispered among themselves. Master losing his mind. He been cursed. No, he been hiding something. One evening, Aurelia passed the study door and heard Caldwell whispering to himself. I should have done it years ago. Should have ended this before she remembered anything. Before Sabine taught her to think. Aurelia froze. Her breath lodged in her throat. She stepped back silently, heart thudding. Caldwell didn't know she was listening. He didn't know the words Sabine had given her. Memory, silence, vigilance, were already shaping her future. He didn't know she had seen the letters once before, in fleeting glimpses when she'd brought linens to the study. He didn't know that she knew the name Bellweather long before the auction. But the narrator knew. And soon the world around her would as well. That same night, as the moon rose like a thin sickle over Redwood Hollow, Nathaniel approached Aurelia near the laundry yard. His voice was quiet, laced with conflict. You must stay away from my father. Aurelia did not look at him. I always do. Nathaniel hesitated. There are things he has done, things I cannot understand. She lifted her eyes then, watching him with calm, assessing silence. What did he hide from you? She asked softly. Nathaniel swallowed. Enough to ruin us all. He stepped back, troubled, clutching a secret he feared but did not yet comprehend. Aurelia watched him leave, and for the first time, she wondered if Nathaniel Caldwell might be the one thread in this tightly wound tapestry who would eventually unravel everything. What none of them knew, not Caldwell, not Nathaniel, not the servants whispering in corners, was that the truth buried in Redwood Hollow was already moving toward the surface. Once secrets begin to breathe, they become impossible to suffocate. The lessons Sabine had given Aurelia were never meant for the world she lived in. They were meant for a life that Sabine believed her daughter might one day claim. A life hidden behind shadows and possibilities, one that depended on silence, observation, and a mind sharpened by forbidden knowledge. Sabine never said the words outright, but Aurelia understood early. Survival was not enough. Understanding was power. And for a black girl born inside Redwood Hollow, power came only through secrets. The first time Sabine showed her a medical book, Aurelia had been no older than 10. The pages were heavy, the ink faded, the illustrations of bones and muscles both fascinating and frightening. Sabine's hands, steady and precise, traced the outlines. "You must know how the body works," Sabine whispered. "Your own. Others. Pain travels. Injury tells stories. And people who know nothing about bodies are easy to fool." Aurelia didn't understand then. She only nodded. Years later, she would use every one of those lessons. Sabine taught her French lullabies mixed with warnings disguised as songs. She taught her how to read expressions, how to know when fear hid beneath arrogance, how to stand absolutely still until another person revealed their intentions. She taught her how to fold sheets so tightly that no corner slipped loose, how to walk silently across old floorboards, and how to sharpen a small paring knife more effectively than a man wielding a blade twice its size. But the most dangerous lessons were about people. "Men who fear losing control," Sabine said one cold evening, "are the ones who strike first. Do not mistake calm for safety. And do not mistake anger for strength." Aurelia absorbed every word. And by the time she reached 17, she had become exactly what Sabine intended. Observant, deliberate, unreadable, a girl who moved as though she already knew the consequences of every choice. It was that very summer when she overheard the conversation that changed everything. Caldwell was meeting with a man Aurelia had never seen before, someone wearing a crisp black coat, polished boots, and a stern expression that suggested he had never in his life been told no. Aurelia was gathering linens from the balcony when the voices drifted up through the floorboards. "You waited too long," the stranger said. "If they arrive and find her still here." "They will not," Caldwell muttered. "Are you certain?" Caldwell exhaled sharply, the sound brittle. "I said she will be gone. I will sell her before questions begin." "Sell her." Aurelia paused mid-movement. Her fingers tightened around the linen. The stranger continued, "There are rumors already. They say she favors Eleanor." Caldwell's voice turned sharp. "Rumors are the disease of slaves and gossiping women. They know nothing." "Rumors," the man replied, "begin from somewhere." A chair scraped. Footsteps shifted. "She is too valuable to risk," the stranger said. "And if the wrong man learns where she came from..." Caldwell cut him off. "I will take care of it." Silence thickened. The stranger lowered his voice, forcing Aurelia to strain to hear. "You understand the law, Abner. If the documents are found..." "They will not be," Caldwell snapped, "because they no longer exist." Aurelia's breath caught. She leaned closer, heart pounding. "You burned them?" the man asked. "Most," Caldwell said. "Enough to prevent challenges." Challenges. Aurelia didn't yet know what that meant. But her body did. She felt the truth lurking behind the word, coiled like a snake waiting to strike. That night, Sabine found Aurelia sitting near the window with her arms wrapped around her knees. The moon glowed pale, lighting the girl's face with a silver sheen. "You heard something," Sabine said softly. Aurelia didn't respond. Sabine sat beside her. "Tell me." Aurelia swallowed. "He wants to sell me." Sabine closed her eyes briefly. "I knew this day would come." Aurelia turned. "Why?" Sabine hesitated, a rare, fragile pause from a woman who usually carried certainty in every movement. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, shaped by grief she had never allowed herself to express. "Because your existence," Sabine murmured, "is the one truth Abner Caldwell cannot outrun." Aurelia stared at her mother, confusion swirling with growing dread. Sabine reached for her hand. "There are things he has done," Sabine said, "that would destroy his family if the world ever learned them. Things tied to you." "What things?" Sabine shook her head. "Not tonight." Aurelia pulled away slightly. "Mama, I look like her. His wife. I saw the portrait. You never told me why." Sabine's eyes glistened. "Some resemblance is coincidence." "No," Aurelia whispered. "It's not." Sabine held her gaze, calm, steady, final. "You must stop asking. For your own safety." Aurelia wanted to argue, but Sabine stood and placed a gentle hand on the back of her head, smoothing her hair like she had when Aurelia was a child. "Remember what I taught you," Sabine said. "Silence. Observation. And above all, patience. Answers come to those who live long enough to hear them." It was the last night Aurelia felt safe in her mother's presence. Within 2 weeks, Sabine had disappeared. Caldwell told the servants that she had run off, but no one believed him. Sabine was not a woman who ran. She was a woman who endured. A woman who fought quietly with her mind, not her fists. Aurelia searched everywhere, woods, fields, abandoned sheds, but Sabine was gone like a candle snuffed out before dawn. Her absence hollowed the estate. The other enslaved people moved with heavier steps, as though a protective spirit had been ripped away. Caldwell acted as though nothing had happened, but his eyes darted constantly, and he drank twice as much. Aurelia carried her grief like a blade hidden beneath clothing, dangerous, sharp, waiting. She no longer wondered what secrets Caldwell hid. She only wondered how many he had killed to protect them. And soon, very soon, she would learn the answer. The morning after Sabine vanished, Redwood Hollow felt wrong, emptier, darker, as if the air itself resisted being breathed. The estate had known cruelty before, but Sabine's absence stripped away something vital, something steady. She had been the quiet spine of the quarters, the one who diffused tempers, who saw danger before it came, who taught the children to hush when Caldwell's boots could be heard across the yard. Now everything echoed. Aurelia walked through the quarters with a folded sheet in her hands, though she didn't remember picking it up. People stared. They didn't ask. They didn't need to. Her swollen, sleepless eyes told them what had happened. Old Mira, who had lived through 3 owners and outlived a 4th, tugged Aurelia aside. "Child," she whispered, her hand trembling as it brushed Aurelia's arm. "Come inside. You must sit." Aurelia shook her head. "I have work." "No," Mira said firmly. "You have grief." Aurelia held Myra's gaze but said nothing. Silence was easier than allowing the truth to take shape on her tongue. The older woman sighed. "He took her," Mira murmured. "We all know it." Aurelia's mouth tightened. "Why? Why now?" Mira looked toward the main house before she answered. "Because he'd been fearing that woman for years. Fearing what she knew. Fearing what she told you." Aurelia felt the world tilt. "She told me nothing." Myra's eyes softened. "She told you plenty. Enough for him to worry." Aurelia didn't respond. She turned and walked away before Mira could ask more. Behind her, whispers spread like brush fire. He wanted Sabine gone. He's scared of what the girl might learn. He should fear her already. And Caldwell, true to his nature, carried on as though nothing had happened. That afternoon, Aurelia passed the open window of his study and heard the scratching of a quill. Caldwell was writing something, muttering under his breath. "Cannot have her staying, no alternatives, sale must happen." Aurelia's stomach twisted. Sale. Her sale. She didn't need Sabine to explain anymore. The truth was forming threads, thin but strong, weaving themselves into a pattern she could no longer ignore. Later that evening, as the sky bruised into shades of purple and gray, Aurelia encountered Nathaniel near the orchard. He had been pacing a worn patch of grass into a shallow trench. When he saw her, he froze. "Aurelia," he said quietly. She kept walking. "Wait." She stopped but did not turn. The cicadas hummed behind them, filling the heavy stillness. Nathaniel approached slowly. "I heard about Sabine." Her shoulders stiffened. "I am sorry," he said, though the words sounded clumsy, unsure of their own meaning. Aurelia didn't answer. Nathaniel hesitated. "My father, he did something, didn't he?" She turned then, meeting his gaze with eyes that held no softness left. "You know what he did." Nathaniel's expression tightened, and for the first time he seemed younger, less the air of Redwood Hollow, more a frightened boy peering behind a curtain not meant for him. "I saw the letters again," he whispered. "I know they are connected. I know they're about you." Aurelia stepped closer, voice low. "What did you see?" Nathaniel looked around nervously. "Enough to know father fears someone finding you. Enough to know he is planning something." His breath quickened. "Aurelia, you must leave before he sells you." She studied him, searching his face. There was sincerity there, fear too, but something else, a selfish desperation. He wanted to help her, yes, but he also wanted to save himself from whatever consequences were creeping closer. "Where would I go?" Aurelia asked softly. Nathaniel shook his head helplessly. "I don't know." "Then your warning is useless." He flinched as though struck. "I am trying to help you." "Are you?" Aurelia murmured. "Or are you trying to protect your father's reputation?" Nathaniel stepped back, stung. "That is not fair. Nothing about this place is fair." He didn't reply. His hands trembled slightly before he shoved them into his pockets. I want you to be safe." Aurelia held his gaze a long moment before turning away. "Safety is not an option for people like me." Nathaniel watched her walk off, but what neither of them knew was that Caldwell had been standing on the upper balcony, unseen in the shadows, watching the entire exchange. His face held no grief over Sabine. No shame. Only cold calculation. That night, Caldwell locked himself in the study. The single candelabra cast long, uneven shadows on the walls as he opened the iron lockbox beneath his desk. Inside were documents, some singed at the edges, others folded neatly, still bearing old wax seals. He pulled out one letter and read it aloud. If the child remains in your household past her 15th year, you risk exposure. Remove her before she resembles her mother, or her true father. Caldwell crumpled the letter, pressing it to his forehead as though the words themselves were knives. It should have been done earlier, he muttered. But it is not too late. It cannot be too late. He rose abruptly, opened a drawer, and retrieved a small silver flask. He drank deeply, wiping his mouth with a shaking hand. His reflection in the window looked warped, like a man unraveling thread by thread. The next morning, a note appeared on the kitchen table. In Caldwell's handwriting. Aurelia to be sold. Richmond. Private lot. Do not speak of this to her. When Aurelia saw the servants reading the note, their eyes filled with dread. They parted in silence, allowing her to pass. She looked at the note. Then she looked at the horizon, watching the early sun bleed over the fields. Sabine's voice whispered through memory. Patience. Silence. Observation. Aurelia straightened her shoulders. If Caldwell thought selling her would end the danger, he had no idea he was only beginning it. The days following the announcement of Aurelia's sale stretched long and brittle, like thin branches ready to snap. Redwood Hollow felt suspended between dread and anticipation. The enslaved people moved quietly, their eyes constantly drifting toward Aurelia as if she carried a clock counting down to something none of them could stop. Caldwell became harsher. He stormed through the estate barking orders, shouting at overseers, correcting tasks that didn't need correcting. His hands shook even when he wasn't drinking, and the veins in his temples pulsed visibly. He dismissed two field hands for talking too much, though neither had said a word within his hearing. He snapped at Nathaniel almost daily. You will stay away from her, he growled one morning. Nathaniel bristled. Father. Do not argue. That girl brings nothing but danger. She is to be sold. That is the end of it. Nathaniel clenched his jaw but didn't push further. Instead, he watched Aurelia from a distance, guilt burning through him like fever. Aurelia ignored him. She moved through the estate with the same stillness Sabine had taught her, but inside her chest, something cold and deliberate was forming. An instinct born from the knowledge that she was being hunted, moved like a piece on a board she had not built. 3 nights before the trip to Richmond, Aurelia was sent to the main house to deliver a tray of folded linens. She had not been allowed inside the house in years. Caldwell's sudden order was deliberate, and she knew better than to walk blindly. She stepped into the hallway cautiously, eyes scanning corners, listening for footsteps. Caldwell's study door was cracked open. At first she moved past it, but a voice stopped her. They are searching already. Aurelia froze. Investigators from the north, the child might still be alive. Another voice responded, low, sharp. If they find her, it is over. You understand that, do you not? Aurelia shifted just enough to see through the crack. Caldwell stood at his desk with a trembling hand pressed to his forehead. Across from him was a man Aurelia recognized instantly, the stranger from years ago, the one Sabine feared. He looked even colder now. They have reason to believe she was not taken out of the state as you claimed, the stranger said. If they learn she is here, if they discover her parentage, your entire estate could be seized. Caldwell's breath came out in ragged bursts. I am selling her. Richmond will take her off my hands. For how long? The man stepped closer. Until someone recognizes her resemblance? Until some fool opens his mouth? You are playing a dangerous game. Caldwell snapped, I have no other choice. The stranger paused, then lowered his voice. There is always another choice. Aurelia understood the meaning instantly. He wasn't suggesting another buyer. He was suggesting the one alternative Caldwell had been too afraid to attempt. Murder. Caldwell shook his head violently. No, not that. Too many eyes. Too many risks. Then you ensure the sale. No hesitation. No delays. And once she leaves this estate, pray she disappears quietly. The man turned, stepping toward the door. Aurelia slipped back just in time, pressing herself against the dark hallway wall as he exited. He walked past her without noticing, his boots clicking sharply against the wood. Caldwell followed moments later, muttering under his breath. Aurelia remained still until she heard the front door close. Only then did she inhale. Her chest burned with the weight of what she had just learned. Caldwell was not selling her for profit. He was selling her to survive. And she, unknowingly, had become a threat powerful enough to unravel him. That night, Aurelia sought out Nathaniel in the stables. He was grooming a horse, hands shaking with frustration he could not resolve. She approached quietly. "You said you wanted to help me." Nathaniel looked up sharply, relief and fear mixing in his expression. "Aurelia, I did not expect you. You said there were letters," she said. "You said they were about me. If that is true, I need to know what your father is hiding." Nathaniel hesitated. "He would kill me if he knew I showed you anything." "He will kill me if you don't." Nathaniel flinched. Aurelia watched him, refusing to soften her gaze. Finally, he wiped his palms on his trousers. "The letters, they speak of a dispute. A legal one. From before I was born." Aurelia stepped closer. "What kind of dispute?" Nathaniel swallowed. "Inheritance. Bloodlines. Someone believed father hid a child that did not belong to him." Aurelia's breath left her body as if punched out. "My father?" Nathaniel looked at the ground. "I don't know. But they insisted she be removed from the estate before she grew older." "She?" Aurelia repeated. Nathaniel nodded weakly. "Yes." Something cold rippled through Aurelia's spine. "They meant me." Nathaniel didn't deny it. Aurelia stared toward the dark fields, her voice flat. "He is selling me to keep someone from finding me." Nathaniel stepped forward, desperation tightening his voice. "Aurelia, you do not understand what is happening. If you run, he will chase you. If you stay, he will sell you. I am trying to protect you." "No," Aurelia whispered, turning to face him with quiet certainty. "You are trying to protect him." Nathaniel's face crumpled. He reached out as if to grab her arm, but she stepped back. She left him there, standing in the dim lantern glow, shaking with a fear that was no longer for her, but for himself. Because what Nathaniel did not know, and what Aurelia had just realized, was that Caldwell's plan was unraveling faster than he could control. He believed that selling her would erase the danger. But danger does not vanish when sold. It spreads. And Aurelia, with her silence sharpened by loss and her mind shaped by Sabine's teachings, was becoming more dangerous than Caldwell ever imagined. The morning of the journey to Richmond arrived colder than expected for early October. A gray sky hung low over the fields, pressing down on Redwood Hollow as though the heavens themselves were warning its occupants to stay home. But Caldwell pushed forward with the urgency of a man fleeing his own shadow. A wagon had been prepared at dawn, its wheels oiled, its horses restless. Two armed overseers stood by with rifles slung across their shoulders, not for Aurelia, but for the paranoia clawing at Caldwell's nerves. He paced the yard, muttering to himself, adjusting the collar of his coat, checking the time though he wore no watch. Aurelia emerged from the quarters with no bundle, no belongings, nothing but the clothes on her back. She refused to give Caldwell the satisfaction of seeing fear. Her chin was lifted, her gaze steady. The other enslaved people gathered silently, watching her pass as if witnessing the final step of a slow, deliberate execution. Old Mira clutched her hands. "Child, walk with eyes open." Aurelia nodded once. She did not trust her voice. As Aurelia approached the wagon, Caldwell gestured sharply. "Get inside." She didn't move. "I said get inside," he repeated, voice cracking. Aurelia held his gaze long enough to unsettle him. Then she climbed into the wagon, settling herself on the wooden bench. Caldwell avoided looking directly at her. Nathaniel, however, stood nearby with pale cheeks and troubled eyes. When Aurelia's gaze found his, he stepped forward. "Father," Nathaniel said quietly, "is this truly necessary?" Caldwell rounded on him. "Do you question me now? After all I have done for this family?" Nathaniel swallowed. "This is wrong." "What is wrong?" Caldwell hissed. "Is letting that girl stay another day." His voice carried more emotion than he intended. The overseers exchanged glances, uneasy without understanding why. Nathaniel took a breath, lowering his voice. "If Sabine were still—" "Enough," Caldwell snapped. "Sabine is gone. And the girl is going." Aurelia felt the words lodge like stones behind her ribs. Nathaniel shut his eyes briefly, then stepped toward the wagon, placing a hand on its edge. "Aurelia, listen." She did not respond. He lowered his voice. "In Richmond there will be buyers who—" Caldwell yanked Nathaniel's arm away. "You will not speak to her. Do I make myself clear?" Nathaniel stared at Aurelia, regret shining in his eyes. "I am sorry," he whispered. Aurelia looked away. The wagon jolted as Caldwell climbed aboard. The overseers took their horses and led the procession down the dirt road toward Richmond. As they moved away from Redwood Hollow, the estate seemed to exhale, a long, low breath of relief or warning none could say. The journey was slow. The wheels bumped over roots and stones, and every jolt sent shivers through Aurelia's spine, though she refused to wince. Caldwell sat across from her, his fingers tapping rhythmically against his knee, a habit of a man clinging to control he did not possess. He watched her intermittently, studying her face as though memorizing it, as though preparing himself to never see it again. Aurelia pretended not to notice. After an hour of silence, Caldwell finally spoke. "You think this is punishment," he said. "You think I am doing this out of spite." Aurelia did not look at him. "This is survival," Caldwell continued. "My. Nathaniel's. The family name." She remained silent. His voice sharpened. "Do you know what your mother did?" Aurelia lifted her eyes slowly. "I know she lived." Caldwell's face twitched. "She should never have taught you anything. She should never have let you be what you are." "And what am I?" Aurelia asked, voice calm. Caldwell hesitated, one beat, then two. His throat tightened. He looked away. "You are a mistake," he said. Aurelia felt the words but did not let them land. Sabine had warned her of men whose cruelty came from fear. Caldwell's every action, every word, every imagined threat, it all traced back to the same root. Fear. And Aurelia was the source. Around midday they stopped near a small stream. The overseers watered the horses while Caldwell stepped aside to drink from his silver flask. Aurelia remained in the wagon watching him. He paced by the water, muttering to himself. After today it will be over, no more letters, no more threats, no more resemblance. He drank again. His hands trembled violently. The overseers whispered among themselves. "Colonel losing his nerve," one muttered. "He looked like he's seen death. Or running from it." Aurelia listened, her mind piecing together what the overseers didn't know. Caldwell wasn't just afraid of losing his estate. He was afraid of being exposed. By late afternoon, the wagon creaked into Richmond, passing narrow brick buildings, carriages, shouting merchants, and the thick crowds that gathered around Shockoe Bottom, home of the city's largest slave market. Aurelia sat straight, absorbing every detail. She would need all of it. As they approached the platform, Aurelia saw the buyers lined like vultures awaiting carcass. Their eyes traveled over her with greed and calculation. But one man's gaze stopped her cold. He stood on an upper balcony, coat collar raised, scar slicing along his jaw, the same man who had visited Caldwell years earlier. The one Sabine had feared. The one Aurelia had seen again through the study door. His eyes locked directly onto hers. She understood then, he hadn't come to bid. He had come to supervise. To ensure she disappeared. Caldwell noticed him too, and his face drained of color. "What is he doing here?" Caldwell whispered, voice shaking. The man on the balcony didn't speak. He didn't move. He only watched. Caldwell grabbed Aurelia's arm, tighter than necessary. "Do not look at him." She stared straight ahead. And then, as the auctioneer called her name and the crowd shifted eagerly, Aurelia realized something Caldwell never would. He thought selling her would end the threat. But selling her would only spread it. Bellweather's plantation lay 2 miles beyond the James River, past a stretch of black pine woods that swallowed the sun every afternoon and released the cold before dusk. Locals called it the Hollow, not because of its shape but because of the feeling it gave, like sound itself thinned out when passing through. The estate rose at the end of an iron-gated road, a stark white mansion with columns so tall they resembled prison bars. The air smelled faintly of iron and damp stone. Aurelia took all of this in as Bellweather's carriage rolled through the gates. The judge sat across from her, his posture rigid, his gloved hands resting atop a silver-tipped cane. His expression never shifted, not when the wheels hit a rut, not when the horses snorted, not when Aurelia's eyes met his. If Caldwell had been a man unraveling, Bellweather was the opposite. A man who had tied every emotion into tight, controlling knots. "Do you know," Bellweather finally said, his voice smooth as polished oak, "why I purchased you?" Aurelia did not answer. He studied her silence. "You are not a simple domestic servant, Aurelia." Even Caldwell knew that. Still she remained quiet. The judge leaned forward slightly. "I recognize resemblance when I see it. And you are a copy of someone I once knew. Someone whose existence caused trouble far beyond Caldwell's plantation." Aurelia met his gaze, refusing to show the flicker of understanding that rose inside her. "Your mother, Sabine," Bellweather continued, "was a woman of secrets. I imagine she loved you fiercely. But love makes people foolish, desperate, blinded." Aurelia's pulse quickened. Bellweather noticed and allowed himself a thin smile. "You do understand," he murmured. "Good. that will make our conversations easier. The carriage stopped. Two household servants, both enslaved, both older, approached the carriage with solemn, careful movements. Their expressions held not cruelty but exhaustion. One man lowered the step while the other opened the door. Bellweather gestured. "Come." Aurelia stepped down, feet landing on gravel that felt sharp beneath her thin soles. The mansion loomed overhead, its windows narrow and watchful. No laughter, no voices, no warmth emanated from inside. She sensed structure, discipline, and fear, woven into the very wood. A house built on silence. Bellweather led her inside. The entry hall was lined with portraits of stern-faced men, each painted with the same cold, appraising eyes. A grandfather clock ticked loudly, marking time as though measuring the value of every breath taken inside its walls. The judge turned to the older woman who had opened the door. "This is Mariah. She will tell you the household expectations." Mariah nodded once, her voice soft. "Yes, sir. Come with me, child." Aurelia followed Mariah through a side corridor while Bellweather disappeared into his study. When they were out of sight, Mariah glanced over her shoulder and whispered, "Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not move through the house without permission. And do not go near the east wing." "Why?" Aurelia asked quietly. Mariah hesitated. "Because the judge keeps things there he does not want anyone seeing." Aurelia absorbed the words carefully. "What kind of things?" The older woman's eyes flicked toward a hallway shadow. "Documents, letters, records of people who came before you, and some who disappeared." Aurelia's chest tightened. "Sabine?" Mariah's steps faltered. She turned, her voice barely above a breath. "I knew your mother. Years ago. Before she was sold." Aurelia's breath caught. "Was she here?" Mariah nodded slowly. "For a short time. The judge sent her away. Caldwell bought her soon after." "Why was she sent away?" Aurelia asked. Mariah shook her head. "That is not my place to say." But the tremor in her voice revealed she knew much more. Before Aurelia could ask another question, a voice called from behind them, "Enough talking." A tall man, another servant, likely a driver, stood with his arms crossed, expression hard but eyes sympathetic. "Mariah," he said, "Judge wants her taken to the linen quarters." Mariah gestured and they continued walking. As they moved through the house, Aurelia caught fragments of whispered conversations from open doorways. Bellweather been writing letters again. He's searching for something. Or someone? Caldwell finally broke. None of them clarified anything but all confirmed one truth. Aurelia's presence was not ordinary. She stirred fear, suspicion, anticipation, the kind of tension that changes a household. The linen quarters were small but tidy. Shelves stacked with folded sheets lined the walls. A narrow cot rested in one corner, covered by a plain wool blanket. As Mariah handed Aurelia a small lamp, she whispered, "Listen carefully. If you hear footsteps after midnight, do not open your door." Aurelia frowned. "Whose footsteps?" Mariah looked toward the hall. "His." Aurelia understood without needing the name repeated. That night, as she lay on the narrow cot, she replayed every word she'd heard, every expression she'd seen, every truth Sabine had hinted at. The shadows on the walls stretched like fingers reaching for her, and the soft creaks of the mansion reminded her that she was not alone, even when no one stood nearby. Around midnight, faint footsteps passed her door. Slow. Measured. Pausing outside her room just long enough to confirm she was awake. Aurelia held her breath. The footsteps moved on. The next morning, Bellweather summoned her to the study. The room smelled of old tobacco and ink. Papers were spread across his desk, some stamped with courthouse seals, others sealed with wax. Aurelia's stomach twisted. Bellweather rested his cane beside the desk. "I want truth from you," he said. "Not lies you learned from Caldwell. Not silence your mother taught you." Aurelia said nothing. Bellweather cleared his throat, then held up a document written in elegant script. "Your mother," he said, "was not who Caldwell claimed. And you," he watched her closely, savoring the moment, "you are not who you believe." Aurelia's jaw tightened. "Then who am I?" Bellweather leaned back, eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of a hunter who had cornered his prey. "That," he said softly, "is what we will soon uncover. But understand this, your existence threatens powerful men. If you are indeed who I suspect, you carry the inheritance of a man whose name is forbidden to speak in this county." Aurelia's breath stilled. "And that," Bellweather murmured, "is why Caldwell sold you. Not to rid himself of property, but to rid himself of evidence." For the next 3 days, Bellweather watched Aurelia with the precision of a surgeon and the suspicion of a man who had lived too long surrounded by lies. He assigned her tasks that brought her into proximity with places she was not supposed to see. His study, the library, the corridor leading to the forbidden East Wing. Each time, Mariah appeared at Aurelia's shoulder with a gentle but urgent warning. "Careful," she whispered once. "Judge Bellweather tests people before he trusts them. And he never trusts anyone." Aurelia nodded, though her mind was less on Bellweather's tests and more on Sabine's warnings. Every moment in that house felt like being on the edge of a blade. One wrong step, one shift of breath, and the truth would cut through everything. On the fourth day, Bellweather summoned her again, but this time she was not led to the study. She was taken down a narrow flight of stairs she had never seen, into a dim cellar that smelled of damp paper and old secrets. A lantern hung from a hook, its flame flickering against the stone walls. "Do you know," Bellweather began, "how many estates in Virginia are built on lies?" Aurelia remained silent. The judge placed a hand on a heavy wooden chest. The lock clicked under his key. He lifted the lid and revealed a stack of sealed envelopes, bound journals, and folded parchments stained with age. "These," Bellweather said, "are disputes, inheritances contested, wills forged, paternity denied. Families in this state are woven together by threads of greed." Aurelia wondered why he was showing her this, until Bellweather withdrew a thin leather-bound folder and placed it on the table. "This one," he continued, "belongs to you." Aurelia's heartbeat faltered. Bellweather opened the folder. Inside were documents handwritten in elegant script, some faded, some crisp. One bore a wax seal Aurelia recognized instantly. She had seen it before on Caldwell's letters. Bellweather tapped the page. "This is a petition filed almost 19 years ago. A woman claimed her newborn child was the illegitimate daughter of a Virginia judge. That judge refused to acknowledge the child. The matter was buried." Aurelia stared, her breath suspended. "Your mother," Bellweather said, "was that woman." The words hit Aurelia like a blow, but she refused to show it. She forced her breathing to remain steady, her posture still. "My mother never told me this," she said. "Of course she didn't," Bellweather replied softly. "Because the man who fathered you never intended for anyone to know. He was powerful, respected, married. And if the courts had believed Sabine's claim, half of this county's elite would have turned on him." Aurelia pressed her palms against the table. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Who was he?" Bellweather held her gaze for a long, quiet moment. The lantern flickered, stretching his shadow across the wall like something monstrous and distorted. "Judge Silas Hawthorne," he said. The name meant nothing to Aurelia. Bellweather saw confusion cross her face. "He died the same year you were born. But while he lived, he controlled half the legal system in Central Virginia." He leaned closer. "And he had one enemy whose hatred for him was absolute." Aurelia's blood ran cold. "Caldwell." Bellweather nodded. "Yes. Your mother served in Hawthorne's household before she was sold to Caldwell. She tried to petition the court, but by then Hawthorne was ill. His wife intervened. The documents were sealed." "Why would Caldwell buy her?" Aurelia asked. Bellweather closed the folder. "Because Hawthorne left an unsigned codicil to his will. If the child Sabine claimed truly existed, that child would inherit land Hawthorne intended for his wife's family. Caldwell wished to use the child to challenge the estate and seize it." Aurelia stepped back. Her chest tightened. "I was an investment." Bellweather's gaze hardened. "Until Caldwell realized the danger. If anyone connected your face to Hawthorne's bloodline, Caldwell risked imprisonment, or worse." Aurelia felt the weight of 19 years collapse inside her. Sabine's warnings, Caldwell's hatred, Nathaniel's fear, the letters, the resemblance to Eleanor Caldwell. All threads of the same woven lie. Bellweather watched her carefully. "You resemble Hawthorne's wife. That is why Caldwell feared you. That is why he kept you hidden. And that is why he sold you." Aurelia swallowed. "Why do you want me?" The judge's voice lowered, slow and controlled. "Because if you are who I believe, you carry a claim stronger than any Caldwell ever held. And with the right strategy, your existence could dismantle the wealth of men who built their fortunes on Hawthorne's legacy." Aurelia's stomach twisted. "You want to use me?" Bellweather did not deny it. "I want justice," he said. "What happens to Caldwell in the process is merely consequence." Aurelia's eyes hardened. "What about Sabine? Did you use her too?" Bellweather's expression flickered, briefly, faintly. "Your mother understood survival. She did what she needed to protect you." "By being sold?" Aurelia asked coldly. Bellweather exhaled. She had no choice. Hawthorne's wife demanded her removal. Caldwell wanted leverage. Your mother did the only thing she could. She ensured you lived. Aurelia stepped back. You know what happened to her. Bellweather's shoulders stiffened. Sabine was taken from Caldwell before she could testify. Taken where? Silence thickened. Aurelia's voice sharpened. Taken where? Bellweather finally answered. To a place where Caldwell believed she would never be found. Aurelia's vision blurred with heat she refused to call grief. He killed her. No, Bellweather said. He feared her. Others silenced her. Aurelia's jaw clenched. Who? Bellweather looked at her with cold sincerity. The same men who would kill you if they learn you're alive. Aurelia stared at him, realization sinking into bone. She wasn't just property. She wasn't just a woman sold at an impossible price. She was evidence, a living threat, a secret worth killing for. Her voice trembled with quiet defiance. So what happens now? Bellweather picked up the folder, tapped it once against the table, and spoke with chilling calm. Now, Aurelia, we determine whether you will become a weapon or a memory. Aurelia felt every lesson Sabine ever taught ignite inside her. She would not die for someone else's lie, and she would not be used by men who spoke of justice while practicing manipulation. Bellweather believed he controlled her. But what he did not know, what he could not know, was that Aurelia had already decided her path, and it did not include remaining in his house. The next week unfolded with a quiet tension that wrapped itself around Bellweather's estate like an invisible noose. Aurelia noticed it in the shifting footsteps of the household, in the way Mariah held her breath every time the judge summoned her, in the way the windows seemed to darken earlier each evening, as though the night was arriving faster in warning. Bellweather grew more restless as well. He paced his study late into the night, muttering over the documents he had shown Aurelia, rereading them as if the ink might suddenly rearrange itself and reveal new answers. He slept less. He questioned more. And each day he took a renewed interest in Aurelia, calling her into the study for tasks that were more interrogation than labor. Sit, he said one evening, gesturing to the chair across from him. Aurelia obeyed, spine straight, hands clasped loosely in her lap. Bellweather tapped his cane against the floor. I need you to understand something. Your existence places you in danger. Not from me, but from the men who feared Judge Hawthorne. He leaned forward. If they learn you are alive, they will eliminate any trace of you. Aurelia kept her expression even. Then why keep me here? Bellweather's eyes flickered with frustration. Because your bloodline can be weaponized. Because you can claim what others fear losing. Then his voice lowered. Because Sabine asked me to watch over you. Aurelia's heart stumbled. She spoke to you? Once. Bellweather's jaw tightened. The day before she disappeared. Aurelia sat still as stone. Bellweather continued, she found me in Richmond. She begged me to keep the documents sealed and to ensure Caldwell never used you as leverage. She knew he would. A shadow crossed the judge's expression. I told her I would try. You failed, Aurelia said quietly. Bellweather stiffened, and used to being spoken to with such blunt truth. But he didn't argue. He only exhaled long and heavy. Sabine's disappearance was not Caldwell's doing, he said. Not directly. Aurelia clenched the arms of the chair. Then whose? Bellweather looked at the window rather than at her. Men who served Judge Hawthorne's wife. Men who wanted Sabine silenced after Hawthorne's death. Pause. They considered the child still a threat. Aurelia's fingers curled inward. Me. Bellweather nodded. Yes. The room thickened with a silence that stretched, heavy and suffocating. Aurelia didn't trust Bellweather, not his motives, not his morals, not the polished calm he hid behind. But she recognized sincerity when she saw it. And something in his manner told her he feared the same men Sabine once did. That made him dangerous. But it also made him predictable. That night, as Aurelia returned to her quarters, Mariah pulled her aside with urgent eyes. What did he tell you? Mariah whispered. Too much, Aurelia murmured. And not enough. Mariah's hands tightened around Aurelia's wrist. You must leave this place. Aurelia looked at the older woman. He watches everything. How do I leave? You wait until the storm. Storm? Mariah nodded toward the darkening sky. Rain coming. Art. When it hits, the judge stays in his study and the guards stay inside. That is when you move. Aurelia listened. The air felt thick. Lightning crackled somewhere far off. She whispered, What about you? Do not worry for me, Mariah said. I am too old to fear men like Bellweather, but you still have a life to claim. Aurelia swallowed, then nodded. She returned to her tiny linen quarters, lit the lamp, and waited. The storm arrived just before midnight, violent and sudden. Rain hammered the roof like fists, and the wind screamed against the shutters. Thunder rolled so deeply it felt like the house itself trembled. Aurelia rose. She moved silently into the hall. The lamps flickered, weakened by drafts. Footsteps echoed distantly, guards rushing toward shelter, not toward her. She reached the east wing. The door was locked. Aurelia knelt, checking beneath the rug. She remembered Bellweather's study, the way he hid keys beneath documents, between books, inside drawers he never fully closed. She pressed her fingers along the floorboard seam. One plank shifted slightly. There. A small brass key. Aurelia unlocked the door. The corridor beyond was colder. The walls were lined with shelves stacked with trunks, boxes, old ledgers, records Bellweather didn't want exposed. The air smelled of dust and mold, but also ink, fresh ink. Aurelia approached a desk in the far corner. Papers were scattered across it. She lifted one sheet. It was her mother's handwriting. She recognized the loops, the graceful curve of the letters. If anything happens to me, she must know the truth. She must see Hawthorne's signature. She must understand why they fear her. Aurelia's throat tightened. Her vision blurred. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. She turned. Bellweather stood in the doorway, lantern held high, face carved with fury. I knew it, he hissed. Curiosity is a cancer. Sabine had it. Now you have it. Aurelia backed away slowly. Bellweather stepped inside, slamming the door shut behind him. You think you can run? He snarled. And go where? To whom? Men like Caldwell will hunt you. Men like Hawthorne's kin will destroy you. You belong to no one, Aurelia. Nowhere. Aurelia's jaw planted firmly. I belong to myself. Bellweather lunged. Aurelia grabbed the lantern on the desk, swinging it in a desperate arc. It crashed into his shoulder, glass shattering, flame exploding across the stack of papers. Bellweather screamed, stumbling backward as fire raced across the documents. Aurelia didn't wait. She darted past him, pushing through the door as smoke bloomed behind her like a warning. Bellweather roared her name, but she was already running, down the hall, past the linen quarters, toward the back exit Mariah had whispered about. The storm swallowed her immediately. The darkness welcomed her. Bellweather's estate, the house built on silence, secrets, and fear, was now burning. And Aurelia, for the first time in her life, was free. But freedom, she would soon learn, did not mean safety. The fire at Bellweather's estate did not consume the mansion in one night, but it consumed everything that mattered. Smoke rose above the treetops for hours, a dark pillar twisting into the storm-thick sky. The fire crawled across the east wing first, where Bellweather kept his secrets, chewing through the shelves, the trunks, the letters, and the documents he had protected with a paranoia bordering on devotion. By dawn, the flames had weakened enough for the surviving household to move through the wreckage. The roof sagged, beams cracked, walls blackened into fragile charcoal. Servants whispered the same name again and again. Aurelia. That girl, she gone. Judge Near lost his mind. Judge Bellweather survived, but barely. His right arm was burned from shoulder to wrist, wrapped now in bandages as stiff as plaster. He paced among the ruins like a specter, silent, red-eyed, trembling with a fury that had nowhere to go. She planned this, he whispered. Sabine taught her too well. The few household servants who remained kept their distance. No one dared contradict him. No one dared provoke a man whose entire life's purpose had just burned to ash. But Bellweather's rage had only one direction to travel, toward the woman who had escaped him. Aurelia. Aurelia didn't stop running until her legs buckled beneath her. The storm eased into a cold drizzle as dawn approached, turning the forest floor into slick mud. She collapsed near the twisted roots of an ancient oak, chest heaving, clothes soaked through, smoke still clinging to her skin. For a few minutes, she lay motionless, staring at the faint glow rising behind the trees, the remains of Bellweather's house. She didn't cry. She didn't mourn. She didn't allow herself to feel anything at all. Feelings she knew made people slow. Slow people died. When she finally rose, her body protested every movement, but her mind was sharper than it had ever been. Sabine's voice echoed in her memory. Your body will tire. Your mind cannot. Aurelia walked until the sky brightened and the rain faded into mist. She followed the river, knowing it led toward a road. Knowing the road led somewhere, anywhere, better than where she'd been. By midday, she reached a crossroads where an old tobacco barn leaned like a drunk man against a fence. A lone horse grazed nearby. An older black man, broad-shouldered, scarred hands, stood repairing a wheel on a small wagon. He looked up as Aurelia approached, eyes filled with caution but not cruelty. "Girl," he said slowly, "you look like death been chasing you." She steadied herself. "I need help." "Help?" he echoed, wiping his brow. "And what kind of trouble follows you?" Aurelia hesitated. "A judge." The man's eyebrows rose. "Then you best come inside." He gestured with a nod. "Ain't no good man ever been chased by a judge." Inside the barn, he offered her a dry cloth, a corner of the wagon to sit on, and after a long pause, half a biscuit left from breakfast. She ate silently. The man finally spoke. "Name's Harlow. And you?" Aurelia lowered the biscuit. "Aurelia." Harlow froze. Still studied her face. "I heard that name once," he said quietly. "Years back. Before Sabine disappeared." Aurelia's breath halted. "You knew her?" "Knew of her," Harlow corrected. "People talk. Word travels. And folks said she had a daughter who wasn't supposed to stay alive." Aurelia swallowed hard. "They were right." Harlow nodded slowly, accepting her answer. "Where you heading?" "North," Aurelia said. "Anywhere north." Harlow exhaled. "Girl, they'll be looking for you. Men with guns. Dogs. The law." "I know." "Then you ain't going alone," Harlow said. "Not if your mama was Sabine." Aurelia stared. "Why help me?" Harlow answered without hesitation. "Because Sabine helped plenty who couldn't repay her. Because she saved my sister from being sold when Caldwell was drunk enough to sign anything put before him. And because if that judge is after you," he shook his head, "then you dangerous to the wrong men. And that makes you worth protecting. Aurelia felt her throat tighten, not with grief this time but with something like resolve. "We leave at sunset," Harlow said. Back in Richmond, Judge Bellweather sought reinforcements. He visited a lawyer first, one who owed him favors. Then a former bailiff. Then a patrol captain. All listened as the judge spun his story. "A runaway woman," Bellweather said, "stole documents vital to the state. She is not who she claims. She is a danger to law and order." He didn't mention that she was the rightful heir to Hawthorne's estate. He didn't mention that he intended to use her for his own gain. And he certainly didn't mention that she had nearly killed him. By nightfall, Bellweather had a search party, a group of 5 men each armed and eager for reward. "Find her," Bellweather commanded. "Bring her back alive." "And if she resists?" one asked. Bellweather's burned hand twitched. "Then do what must be done." What he did not know, what none of them knew, was that Aurelia already had help, already had a plan, already had the beginnings of something he could never foresee. Freedom. Not the fragile kind granted by papers or signatures. The kind born of movement, fire, and purpose. Harlow guided Aurelia north through thick woods, away from roads where patrols searched. They slept under trees, drank from streams, moved silently. On the 3rd day, they reached the shallow southern edge of the Chickahominy Swamp, a maze of mud, reeds, and hidden paths only locals understood. "We cross here," Harlow said. "Dogs lose the scent in the water." Aurelia stepped into the swamp without hesitating. But Bellweather's search party was only a half-day behind. By sunset, their torches flickered at the swamp's edge, lighting the water with an orange glow. "She came through here," one man said, examining footprints near the bank. Bellweather's eyes narrowed. "Then she is close." The wind rustled the reeds. Rain clouds gathered again, thick with warning. Aurelia looked back only once at the silhouettes emerging at the swamp's edge. "They're coming," she whispered. "I know," Harlow said. "But so are we." He pointed ahead, where the sky brightened through the trees, a sign of land beyond the swamp, and beyond that, the road north. Aurelia inhaled deeply, her breath steady, her eyes sharp. She would survive this. Not because she was hidden. Not because she was protected. But because she had finally learned who she was. And once a secret learns its own name, no man can bury it again. For 3 more days, Aurelia and Harlow pushed northward through the thickest parts of the Chickahominy Swamp, navigating paths so narrow that even sunlight struggled to slip through. The wet earth sucked at their feet, mosquitoes swarmed in clouds, and the air carried the heavy scent of decaying leaves. But the swamp protected them. It hid sound, masked scent, swallowed tracks. It had been sanctuary to runaways for decades, and it became the womb of Aurelia's rebirth. The deeper they went, the more her resolve hardened. Sabine had hidden truths to keep her alive. Caldwell had hidden her to keep himself alive. Bellweather had tried to control her to serve his interests. But here, among mud and still water, Aurelia understood something new. She was no longer an heir to secrets. She was the author of her own. On the fourth day, they reached dry ground at the swamp's northern edge. A faint road stretched ahead, leading toward towns where papers could be forged, where names could be changed, where the law had less reach. Harlow stopped beside a moss-heavy cypress and exhaled. "Past here, girl, you ain't Aurelia no more. You choose who you be." Aurelia looked up at him. "And you?" "I'll go as far as the Pamunkey Crossing," he said. "After that, I reckon you'll be safer without someone old and slow tagging along." Aurelia's expression softened. "You're not slow." Harlow chuckled. "Girl, I'm old enough to know when death walkin' behind me." He tapped his chest. "And death been whisperin' since we left Bellweather's place." Before Aurelia could speak, a rustle sounded through the reeds. Both turned sharply. Harlow pulled Aurelia behind him, gripping a rusted hunting knife. Through the brush emerged a woman. Gray-haired, wrapped in a patchwork shawl, carrying a basket of herbs. Her eyes widened when she saw Aurelia. "Well now," she murmured, "I seen you in dreams 3 nights runnin'. Aurelia blinked. "You know me?" The woman shook her head. "No, but the swamp know you. Swamp never send me visions unless someone runnin' from iron hands." Harlow lowered his knife. "Alma, that you?" The woman smiled. "Who else wander this mess? Come, you both need rest. And papers. I got ways." Aurelia followed cautiously. Alma's hut stood on stilts above a shallow marsh, smoke curling gently from its crooked chimney. Inside, jars lined the walls, roots, powders, tinctures. A small fire crackled in the hearth. Alma gestured for Aurelia to sit. "Tell me," she said, "why a judge got men hunting you?" Aurelia hesitated. Then she told her, about Sabine, about Hawthorne, about Caldwell, about Bellweather's fire, about the documents, about running. Alma listened without blinking, without gasping, without judgment. When Aurelia finished, Alma said, "Then you ain't runnin' from one man. You runnin' from a story men tried to bury." Aurelia nodded slowly. "Yes." "Good," Alma said. "Stories that scare men got power." That night, Aurelia slept under a patched quilt, the first real rest she'd had since Sabine vanished. When dawn broke, Alma handed her a folded packet. Inside were forged papers. A new name. A birth in Pennsylvania. Freedom. Aurelia stared. "How did you?" "Child," Alma interrupted, "you think you the first to pass through these waters? I help those who need help. That's simple." Aurelia closed the packet carefully. Harlow finished tightening the straps on a small satchel for her. "Road north leads to Petersburg rail line," he said. "A conductor there help free folks move quiet." Aurelia looked at him, grief and gratitude mixing. "Will I ever see you again?" "Maybe," Harlow said. "Maybe not. But if you make it north, tell folks your name ain't the one men tried to put on you." Aurelia inhaled sharply. "I will." Harlow squeezed her shoulder once, then turned away before emotion could betray him. Alma guided Aurelia through a hidden path that emerged near a narrow road. The morning sun filtered through the trees, warm and golden. "This where I leave you," Alma said. "Walk careful. Speak less. See everything." Aurelia nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Alma replied. "Thank the ones who kept you alive, your mama, that swamp, and whatever spirit been watching you since you took breath." Aurelia stepped onto the road. Behind her, Alma melted into the woods. Ahead of her, a new life waited. 3 months later, winter settled over Virginia. Snow dusted the remains of Bellweather's east wing. Caldwell was found dead in the river near Redwood Hollow, face bruised, pockets empty, hat missing. The official story claimed he slipped while drinking. None believed it. Nathaniel inherited Redwood Hollow but could not rebuild it. Too many debts. Too many lies. He left the estate, sold off the land, and vanished from county records. As for Bellweather, his influence crumbled. Without documents to prove Aurelia's lineage, his claim over Hawthorne's estate fell apart. Rumors leaked about the fire. About the runaway woman. About a judge whose secrets drowned him. Some whispered Aurelia had died. Others whispered she had become a ghost haunting the swamps. But a few, those who listened carefully, heard different tales. A woman living near New York. A midwife who spoke French. A brown-skinned woman with quiet eyes and a scar on her hand from a lantern burn. A woman who helped others flee south to north. A woman who taught them the same lessons Sabine once taught her. Silence. observation, patience, and truth. Decades later, when the Civil War ended and historians combed through forgotten court records, someone found a fragment of a burned petition filed by Sabine. The ink was smeared, the edges charred. Only one line was legible. The child must live. The truth must live with her. No historian could confirm the names. No official could explain the disappearance of Aurelia Caldwell from plantation records. No one knew what became of her life in the North. But among the descendants of those she had helped, her story remained. A whisper, a warning, a testament. Some secrets survive because people forget them. Others survive because someone chooses to carry them forward. Aurelia chose the latter. And because she did, the truth that men tried to bury in Virginia lived on, quiet, powerful, unstoppable, long after the men who feared it turned to dust.